we make this available to you. It'll be on the website, which I will share a link with at the end of this meeting. Then if you have neighbors or anyone who wasn't able to be with us tonight and wants to watch this meeting, they'll be able to do that and get the information that way. I'm going to do three main things tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about, give you a program overview and how these two streets got inducted into the program. Then we're going to look at some concepts for the street that we've been putting together and what we think traffic calming might look like on 37th, 38th Avenue. And then lastly, talk about some of the next steps that we have going forward in the program. There we go. So a little bit about the traffic calming program. This is a residential street program. It's not intended for more of our major arterials, and we also focus on streets that are residential in nature, as opposed to, they serve businesses, they serve industry, and those kinds of things. That's largely because speed and some of the behavior that we're trying to combat with this program is really a quality of life issue for you guys. Nobody wants to live on a street where there's just bad speeding problems and safety issues and all that go with that. So we really focus on residential areas. We do try to focus on lower speeds. That sounds obvious, but sometimes people engage the program hoping that we can shift traffic somewhere else, put it on somebody else. Well, that's not what we try to do. We try to design these projects to not push traffic on somebody else's street, but really just to maintain traffic where it is, just get it to slow down and operate a little bit more responsibly. And we have found that nothing accomplishes that quite as effectively as physical solutions. We do some educational type things with some signage and some markings, but we see the biggest benefit when we can put things like speed cushions and a physical object that someone has to drive over or drive around, and that tends to do the best job of lowering speeds. So we use a lot of those things. We'll talk more about that later. This is one component, or engineering is one component of a more of a holistic speed maintenance plan. Enforcement is one that comes up a lot. People say, why can't you just have police out here write a few tickets, and wouldn't that be a big help? And it probably would be, certainly in the short term, but one is that it's kind of a momentary fix often. As soon as the police pull out, speeding goes back to where it was before. And also, we don't tell the police what to do. They're out there doing very important work in other areas, and often traffic enforcement is not one that they just have a lot of availability for, unfortunately. So we partner with the police. They certainly are supportive of the program and know we're out here working, kind of assist them in doing more of the engineering side. And then, as I mentioned, there is an education component to this, and sometimes our traffic calming projects will focus a little bit more on that, but generally we focus on the engineering side. Right-of-way maintenance and the things that go on our public streets is really the job of NDOT. That's really all they do, is work on right-of-way and try to get people to transport themselves safely. One of the big purposes behind this program is not just speed for drivers in and of itself, but also the impact that has on you living in your neighborhood and on other modes trying to use these streets. We know, especially in places like Sylvan Park, where you are, you have a very walkable neighborhood, and you want it to be that. And that's probably one reason why you choose to live in a neighborhood like that. You really value the ability to be close to things and be able to walk to things. And so we like to show this slide. It just speaks to the impact that speed has on pedestrian activity in the devastating event that there is a car versus pedestrian crash. We know that there is just a tremendous likelihood that a person will be able to survive that crash, the pedestrian, if the car is going slower. So we really try to target those lower speeds in that 20 to 25 mile an hour. You may remember few years ago, Metro did a big blanket speed reduction on a lot of our streets, and this is a big part of it. Just trying to over time reinforce the idea that 25 miles an hour is a appropriate speed in most of our neighborhoods. Some are slower than that even, but that has become the de facto speed limit for Nashville's neighborhoods. Traffic calming continues to be very much of an in-demand program around the county. As of this last application period, we still have well over 500 applications that have come in requesting this type of attention that these two streets have gotten, 37th and 38th Avenues. We just don't have the time and resources to answer every one of those, but we work to give assistance to as many as is possible. This past summer, 85 neighborhoods were selected. That's more than we've ever selected before. So thanks to council and their recognition that this is a very popular program. They've funded it, and so we're doing more traffic calming than we ever have. Typically, we select 50 projects per year in 2 different application windows. There was some surplus funds, and so that's why we're doing a bigger push of these of 85. We always like to plug Hub Nashville. Traffic calming is a little different. Traffic calming, as I mentioned, has those 2 applications windows per year. But any other time, in any other service request that you have for Metro government, whether it's NDOT or any other department practically, should come here, hub.nashville.gov. And the reason we plug this is because sometimes in going through a meeting like this, someone might say, well, you know, a stop sign is not down, or why can't we just get a new stop sign? Or, you know, it sure would be great if we had sidewalks, or, you know, any number of other things. And those are very appropriate requests to go into Hub Nashville. It's a clearinghouse for all things Metro government, and so they track those, you know, and there's kind of a formal process to doing that. So I would encourage you to visit that if you're not familiar with it. If you want to just call and talk to somebody about it, call 311, and they will be glad to assist you in any type of request for your Metro government. A little bit about how these projects got into the program. They got in pretty much the same way all of our projects do. They are prioritized based on some data that we collect. So when all these applications come in, we begin to collect data, and about 70% of the score has to do with what you probably think it is. It's the speed of the car, speed that we measure, and also the amount of traffic volume on the street. We collect all of that, and then rank those in our prioritization method. But the other 30% has to do with some of those other aspects we were talking about. You know, are there transit routes transit services operating on the street? Are there sidewalks? Are there bike lanes? Are there none of those? Are there things that a person might want to walk to, such as a school in the area or a park in the area? And then lastly, has there been evidence that there has been a safety problem? Are there pedestrian-related crashes on the street? So we roll all of that together, and that develops kind of a composite score, and we take the top ones of those, and those are the ones that move on into the implementation or development and then implementation of the traffic calming program. So that's why you're here. I'll give you a little bit of the details of those. And I guess this is as good a time as any to say, or to let you know, while this is a joint meeting, 37th and 38th, you guys are 1 block apart. We're, you know, you've got a lot of similarities, so we thought it most efficient to handle both streets together. These are 2 distinct projects, and we're going to develop them as distinct projects. The designs are separate, and that really becomes important when it comes to ballot these and vote on them and get each street's opinion on the traffic calming program for their street. They're not tied together. So if If one street is all for it and the other street is not, that's totally okay. We're gonna proceed with them as independent streets. We're just having holding these meetings together. So on 37th Avenue, the prevailing speed there is 34 miles an hour. That's middle of the pack, I guess, for the streets that we often work with. Probably even a little bit lower than average for a traffic calming program. Still higher than we want to see, especially when the posted speed limit's 25. You've got about 22 to 2,300 vehicles per day. That often surprises people that there's that much traffic on your street. But again, that's probably middle of the pack. This is the one thing about 37th that is a little bit different is this is a wide street, and we recognize that, and we have to tailor our design accordingly. It's about 34 feet from curb to curb, and I know you've got some parking that happens on that to use that street. We love on street parking. That becomes kind of a traffic calming feature in and of itself. So we have no thoughts about doing away with that or anything like that. So we'll show you kind of our thoughts on that. But we do recognize 34 feet. We've got to do something with that. And then it's about half a mile project. We go from Charlotte down to Sentinel, right there about the railroad tracks. 38th is essentially the same limits. And so it's just a tad shorter, but also about a half mile. It's highly variable. The width here ranges down. I think it's on the southern end towards Sentinel is on the narrower side. It's about 24 feet. And then it gets wider as you go north, if I'm remembering right. But it's variable. And so everywhere, we have some sort of a traffic calming device. We've got to work with that. We'll talk more about what I mean by that, but we recognize the variable nature of that road. It's got less traffic than 37 does, only about 1,300 cars a day, but it is a little bit faster at 38 miles an hour. So that's the type of information that we look at, in addition, as I said, to the presence of sidewalks and those types of things. But be that as it may, you're in the program. The program's funded. If at this point, it's not a matter of, if we're going to do a project, if you guys want it, we're here to kind of work at your service and develop along with you what the appropriate form of traffic calming looks like and move that forward. So all that's just for your information. We like to show this map. This is a snapshot of an interactive map that is on the Metro Traffic Calming website. It's all of Davidson County. So if you want to get on that and pan around, feel free. And what it shows you is the active projects, traffic calming projects, anywhere in the county. So I've zoomed into your area. 37th and 38th are these two little parallel lines right in the middle of the screen that are green. Green means that these are projects that are in the program somewhere. They're just not implemented. They've been accepted, but we may not have had the first meeting, or maybe we've had all the meetings, but it just hasn't been implemented yet. So it's just in development in the traffic calming program. Purple lines or pink lines are those streets that have applied to be in the program but have not been selected. So their scores were less than yours, and so therefore they have just not been selected to be a project yet. But we find that helpful if you're wondering, in this case, Park Avenue, for instance, if you're wondering if anyone has applied, you can get on here and you can see if we already have an application in, and then you don't have to reapply for that street. And then blue lines, blue dotted lines that you see, in this case on 37th, just south of you, just south of the railroad tracks. That was a project we did a little while back that has been implemented. I'm not sure, at least according to this map, it says Nebraska has not been implemented, nor has 42nd, 44th. All of those were in the traffic calming program. Some of them, I think 44th did not pass, but 42nd and Nebraska both have a project coming, just hasn't been implemented yet, at least according to this. Y'all may know better than I do on that, whether those have been installed yet, but all of those are coming. That becomes helpful too if you're not familiar with traffic calming, and I suspect most of you all are living in this neighborhood. You could drive down to 37 and say, hey, what does a speed cushion look like? How does it feel? You can go experience those. And so we show you those wherever they exist anywhere around you. So you can go check those out. A little bit about the toolkit. Again, I'm probably talking to a above average crowd here in terms of your experience with this program and some of the stuff that we do. Speed cushions are really the bread and butter of our program. If People probably think of us as the speed cushion program, and that's not wrong. We do a lot of these, and probably 95+% of the projects are speed cushion based. We've got good experience with them. We find them to be very effective. We find them to be very consistent. We use the same product every time. We can vary the speed cushions that we use a little bit in terms of the length that we select. They can be more aggressive or less aggressive, for instance. And so we have a little bit of room to tailor a design based on the neighborhood. The other thing that we do, and this will become important on probably both streets, but 37th especially, is the width. So you see here in this slide, we've got some configurations that are 2 cushions wide, some that are 3. We've gone up to 4, and then sometimes we even have to go up to 4 and then do things like you see in the picture in the bottom right corner with some flexible delineators. The point there is not to make them more visible or anything like that. The point is we have to design a speed cushion location that cannot be driven around, because if we give enough room either in between the 2 cushions or on the outside edges where people feel like they can drive around it, we know from experience they certainly will do that, even to the point of leaving the road and driving through somebody's yard. So we work with signage, we work with those delineators, we work with speed cushion configurations just to make sure that those cannot be bypassed. But otherwise, it's a pretty standard installation. These are about 3 inches tall. They're made out of rubber. Those arrows that you see are reflective. So again, we've had across Metro, we've had enough go in over the past 3 and 4 years that we've got a pretty good comfort level for how they hold up, the dependability, what they feel like, and the product that we get. Another tool that we have in our toolbox is kind of a close cousin to that, is speed tables. And so essentially the same product, same manufacturer, same rubber that is used in the manufacturing. It's just that it's one continuous piece. We don't use these nearly as often because I guess I failed to mention the one aspect of speed cushions that make them really appealing to us is that break in the middle that you see has less of an impact on emergency vehicles, larger wheelbase vehicles like fire trucks, ambulances. We want those folks to get where they need to be without being hampered too much by these. And so that's the point of that. And that's one reason we don't use speed tables nearly enough. They don't afford that. So everything that drives over those has to slow down significantly. We are using more of those, or I should say parks. The parks department is on some of their parks roads and things like that, just because those don't become emergency routes. But we have used them. We do use them on occasion. It's just not as frequently. Whether we're talking about speed cushions or speed tables, the before and after data, it's not perfect. As an engineer, we always wish we had more data, but what we've got is showing the story, I think, that most of us who drive on these streets before and after have just kind of intuitively know, and that is that they work. We're seeing before and after speed reductions of somewhere between 9-12 miles an hour. Of course, it depends on how fast the traffic was before, and how we space those. There's a lot of different variables that go into the speeding or the speeds that are measured before and after. But in any case, we do see pretty consistent reductions in speed. And I think one thing that's really good about speed cushions, especially, is that speed reduction tends to stick around. It's not like some of the other tools we have. We use radar feedback signs, for instance, and the jury's still out a little bit about how long lasting do those impacts last. They're great at first, but as people get used to them, does that impact go away? We don't find that with speed cushions. It's the same effect every time you drive over those. And so I just mentioned these radar feedback signs. This one falls into more of the educational type of an approach where we're just trying to grab people's attention and say, listen, you really need to slow down. The speed limit is slower than what you're going, and so this feedback can be helpful in some project locations. We use these mostly when conditions aren't right for speed cushions. Um, we may find that we need to use a radar feedback sign on these streets. I don't think so. I don't have one planned for right now. But the reason why we might and why we can't sometimes use a speed cushion are things like if we have sharp curves or if we have just one driveway after the next, we don't ever put speed cushions right in front of someone's driveway. So sometimes the spacing just doesn't lend itself to doing the speed cushions. But the one that might affect y'all is vertical curves going up and down hills. You guys live on a couple of hilly streets, especially 38th, and so we think we can get them in, but until we get out and do the field work and walk those streets and put a level on it, we do have some limitations about the types of grades that we will put speed cushions on. And so in sometimes in places where we can't do consistent speed cushions, we might supplement with a feedback sign, something like that. Sometimes we use pavement markings. We know that, visually as a driver drives down this street and they just see a big expanse of pavement. If we can visually narrow the width of the street, that might have an impact. We have to be careful though, because sometimes we introduce a double yellow line, and that kind of communicates that it's a more major street and that actually you should drive faster on it. So we think long and hard before we introduce paint, but sometimes we will do that. And then sometimes it's just a matter of refreshing paint that may already be there. We can do that as part of a speed calming project as well. Um, Ones that are lesser used, bulb outs, chicanes, when we have, kind of a known issue about people entering a street from a side street, and they're just, either running the stop sign or just turning too quickly onto these side streets. Again, it's about narrowing uh, roads that have traditionally been built pretty wide. And so if we can visually narrow that or physically narrow that and tighten those radiuses up, a car can't make that turn as fast. That's bulb outs. Chicanes are kind of a feature that there's only about 2 streets, maybe 3 streets in all of Metro that I'm aware of where these have been done over the years. And it's kind of a artificial um, zigzag on the street where it's best done in concert with some on-street parking, but you kind of shift the sides of the road where that occurs and sort of artificially introduce some curves into the road that, in theory, slows traffic down. Again, we haven't introduced those onto a new street in quite a while. And then we keep traffic circles on here. We like those. The one aspect to traffic circles is, first of all, intersections have to be very large in order for this to work very well. And even when they're super large, we still find that things like school buses have a really hard time navigating. So we have not in Nashville jumped in with both feet on traffic circles. There are a few around, and some of them are relatively recent, but we're just not doing many of these at the present either. So let's get specific to 37th, 38th. No surprise that these are what we're proposing are generally speed cushion projects. Given the length of these, the way we lay these out is we'll look kind of end to end. So from Sentinel to Charlotte. Again, I mentioned that's about a half mile in both cases. And by the way, just to orient you, north is to the right on these slides. So you see Charlotte over here with the traffic signal on it. I know you're probably used to seeing it running the other way where north would be up and your streets would be running vertically along the page. But just to be able to blow this up a little bit more, I laid them on their side. So 38th is the street on the top and 37th is the street on the bottom. And so when we look at that half mile length, what we're trying to achieve here is if we can get a set of speed cushions at a consistent spacing of somewhere in the neighborhood of of about 400 to 600 feet. That has given us our best results. It doesn't have to be the same at every place, but if the more consistent that we can be, the better. What we want to avoid is having them too far apart where a driver will clear one set of speed cushions, punch the gas, and get to the next set of speed cushions, and then slam on the brakes and repeat that all the way down the street. That's not what any of us want. Instead, we want them, and we also don't want them where, every 20 yards you're going over a set of speed cushion. That drives everybody equally as crazy, especially those of you who have to drive on the street maybe multiple times a day. So we're trying to, and again, not push traffic to another street. So we're not trying to be just totally onerous on this, and at the same time create some consistent speed up and down the street. Again, our target is somewhere around 20, 25 miles an hour when we put these in. So when we get that spacing, we've got a good experience. But as I mentioned, there are some challenges to that in terms of hills, curves, driveways, and those kinds of things. So I put a big note right in the middle of this that says, I'm showing you this now, and I think we're gonna shoot to get about 5 sets of speed cushions on each of these streets. I think that will give us a good level of traffic calming. However, due to what we may find in the field, given the grades on these streets, we may have to push some of these, or we may have to remove one altogether. But this is about where we think these speed cushions will work. Until you get down more to the southern end of the project, they're in about the right spot. We think both of them would be just a little bit north of Park Avenue would have one, just a little bit south of Elkins would be one, just a little bit south of Dakota. And then we can be a little bit more consistent, hopefully, on 37th. Again, just playing with those grades. So you just kind of see the layout that we have in mind here. I want to get your feedback on this if you have any. But one thing that we will do beyond this is we will actually develop a much more detailed set of plans. What I'm showing you is kind of a concept, and I hope it's enough for you to react to. But when it comes time to ballot, you'll have a much more detailed set of plans to look at. We will show you exactly where we are proposing speed cushions, and those usually look like, it'll say something like, 37 feet from the driveway at 123 37th Avenue, something like that. And so you'll know very specifically. You'll also be able to see those at a more detailed level on the overhead pictures and be able to kind of visualize where these are going to go. So I don't want you to think this is all you get. You will have the opportunity to see this in much more detail as you do that voting. I've been doing a lot of talking, and I'm sorry for that. You all, I think, should be free to unmute yourself anytime if you want to, give any feedback on this or ask any questions about the program or the plan, anything I've presented to this point.
I have a question about the layout on the cushions. I'm on 37th Avenue.
Sure.
With the cushion setup, this won't have any of the delimiters, correct?
I can't say that. So it's 34 feet. And I had kind of sketched those out, but at 34 feet, these cushions are 6 feet wide. I'm figuring. Hang on just a second.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, no, I think we can do it without doing delineators, because what we would have is we would space these. You see that it kind of hides down here, but I've got a picture showing 3 cushions wide. We will definitely need that. But then if we have 4 feet to the outside and 4 feet in between, which is kind of our maxes, we find that people can't. Your wheelbase is wider than 4 feet, so you can't avoid them doing that. Then that comes out to 34 feet exactly. So our plan unless we get out there and find something, where we want to put the cushion is just abnormally wide. There's a little bit extra pavement or whatever. We may have to rethink that. But right now we're thinking correct. It would be 3 cushions wide with no additional plastic sticks.
All right. That's great. I have a strong bias against the delimiters as a cyclist. They're one of the 3 or 4 top most dangerous things out there. So if we can avoid them, that would be great. There's a lot of bicycle traffic and motorcycle traffic on the street. We'll make sure that they get good passage as well.
Yeah, great. And by the way, with the width there on 37th, I mentioned this, that you none of that would preclude parking. So I don't think you have a white edge line. I don't think. I have to go back and look at that.
No, we don't.
Yeah. So you can park on these. If a person were to pull up and kind of park with one wheel on these, it won't hurt the cushions any. So in terms of how the street operates or how people park on it or where they put their brush or pull their trash cans on trash day, none of that really has to would need to change. It's just that these go on the street. And, otherwise it works just the same.
Great. Thanks for answering the question.
Mm-hmm. That's true on 37th, and this 3-lane or this 3 cushion wide approach is going to be probably true on at least some of 38th as well. But as I mentioned, as we get down to the narrower parts of 38th down towards Sentinel, it's likely that we would go to a 2 cushion wide configuration and work with the width that we've got there. So. Any other comments or questions on this? Okay, I'm gonna kind of show you where we're going from here. I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that we are now working with 85 different neighborhoods, and that's a lot. What we have done in the past is every one of those had 2 meetings, and so 85 neighborhoods times 2 meetings is an awful lot. What we have tried to do in this cohort, beginning with you guys, is to try and streamline that process a little bit. So we can still have another meeting if you want to, but if what I'm showing you here is kind of in line with your expectations, and the rest of it is details, essentially, you're fine with the idea of speed cushions and the signage that goes with it and all of those kinds of things. What we're trying to do with neighborhoods to jump them ahead and get these projects moving a little quicker is, just go from here. Let us do our design plans. We'll go ahead and post those, and we can move straight into that ballot process. If you have a strong opinion, though, we'd like to get back together and see those details, we can certainly do that. It's just going to add some time to it. We have no problem doing it either way. Glad to, but many of our neighborhoods, when we have gotten into this, just say, no, we're good. We like the concept. We're ready to move forward. Let's go. So I'll just pitch that to you. You guys can tell me what your pleasure is on that. But that's what all of this is. All that I just said is what this chart is trying to represent. We're here at the red meeting, at our neighborhood meeting. We're going to move next into this middle design process. What we'd like to do is come straight out of that and move into the online ballot. But if you want to make a detour over here and have a second meeting, we're happy to do that too. If we move straight into the ballot, I'm going to give you some details, about how that ballot works. But in either case, you will still get the same design plans that will be available online. You can review those. You can ask us questions from those, or whatever however you normally do it. And then moving out of the ballot, that puts us into the construction. So we give some. This is all we've got. In terms of kind of ballpark time estimates. We're asking for about 2 months to get the design done. May not need that much time, but the real time really begins. The online ballot we've got a good handle on. We're going to talk about that, but we keep that open for 6 weeks, and then the clock really starts with the construction. It just takes time to order these materials and kind of work through this backlog that we've got, and ultimately get those into our contractors' calendar to begin implementation. I show you all of this just to kind of set your expectations that nothing is going to happen here. By Valentine's Day, don't expect to be driving over these. That we've got months to go, and so again, just to not to discourage you. I know people often wish it was faster than it is. We do too, but we've got a little time ahead of us to develop some of this. Let me go ahead and move into this ballot because this is a question that comes up a lot. And so what happens is if we've got good consensus on the concept here tonight, we'll go ahead and develop that further. We will post that. And then when it comes time to ballot, what we do is we send out another card. Hopefully, some or all of you on the call tonight got the little card in the mail. Those went out to every owner within the project limits of these streets. And so you'll get a very similar card. It'll just be a little different. It'll have a little more information on it. And that's the actual online balloting card. It's got a QR code that only people who are being balloted have. That goes straight to another Nashville.gov web page where that online balloting process occurs. It's real simple. You put in your name down here where it says this unique ID code at the bottom right of the card. That just makes sure that people are voting that are the ones that are supposed to be voting. We haven't had any issues with this process. It's kind of low tech, but it works well. And what we're looking for is 66%, 2/3 of the people who vote. If they are in favor of the project, it moves forward. So you really only have one option. You can vote yes, you can vote no. And we keep that voting process open for 6 weeks. At the end of that, it's done. So that gives us a good finite time period, and then we move forward one way or the other. So the people who get to vote, same people that get the cards, that's not always the resident. We recognize that. The policy, and we know the good side and the downside of it is we really we put this in the hands of the property owners on the street. So we're gonna ballot property owners. We'll just take 37th. That's the little snapshot I've got here. You have to your property has to abut the right of way of 37th in between Charlotte and Sentinel. The reason I don't go all the way up to Charlotte in this case is because those are commercial properties and we don't ballot commercial properties. We also have a school here, and so we kind of work with MNPS on that. But generally, it's just everybody. So if you live on a corner, if you live, say, on the corner of Elkins and 37th, you have to be on the corner with a part of your property abutting the 37th Avenue right away. That's the limits of who gets to vote on these projects. We don't go down the side streets. We know those people use 37th every day, but they're not affected by speeds the way the people that actually live on the street are. So that's why we limit that. If there is a property owner that owns more than one piece of property within the project, they only get to vote once. We just send them one card to vote. And then, as I said, businesses do not get to vote. So any questions on that process? Well, I'll be glad to open it up again. Any questions or comments that you have, be happy to take those. And then that doesn't have to end tonight. If you think of something, or if you're talking to a neighbor and you both come up with a question, feel free to reach out to either the folks at Metro. That's the top one. That generic NDOT TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov, that generic email address is the best one because there are several people on that team there at Metro, and that goes to all of them. So just to make sure somebody catches that, feel free to include them. You can send it to me as well. You can send it to both of us. I'm Jeff. I'm the consultant working on this project. And I may have worked with some of you in the past. I worked on the Sylvan Park one back down on Nebraska and the other 37th as well. So I'm familiar with the things that went on there. This is, I mentioned, just a link to the Metro Traffic Calming webpage. There's a lot of information there. That map is on there. The old design plans from some of the older projects, if you want to see what those look like. Ballot results are posted on there. How many projects have passed? How many have failed? Some people like to see what odds they're up against or whatever. Just a lot of information there. So, well, again, appreciate everyone's attendance here tonight and interest in the program. Feel free again to reach out to me or Metro as this project moves forward. And I'm going to assume, and I'll leave this chat open if you be glad to leave that open as long as you need to. If you want to say something about, I'm hearing that there's consensus and we can kind of move forward and go straight into that design and then ballot project. But if you have a question and want to leave me an email address, feel free to do that. Otherwise, just email me at this address that you see there on your screen. I'm going to look real quickly before we get off here about comments. I live on Park a couple blocks over. Did not receive a postcard for this meeting. Yeah, if you live on Park and you're not right on the corner of either 37th or 38th, then you wouldn't have gotten one. We only are sending that information out to the people who are directly on the project. We're glad that you're here. We absolutely we'd send it to everybody in Sylvan Park if we thought they cared, and B, we have the resources to do it. But just the policy is we send that to the owners living on those streets. So that's probably why. And then project limits, what constitutes those is that was in the application. So in the application process, it asks what street are you requesting traffic calming on? That was given to us, and then we base all of our data collection and the prioritization based on those limits. This is a really good question. Occasionally, we will go in and say, yeah, they asked for something that we really need to take. If we go one more block, we hit a stop sign or something like that. Just to make a good logical termini to the project. We will adjust them occasionally, but in this case, I think both of these make pretty good standalone projects, going all the way from some Charlotte on one side down essentially to the end of the street at Sentinel or the railroad tracks on the other. So that's how those projects come up for. The short answer is that's what was applied for. Good question. Again, thanks everybody. Appreciate you being here. And if we can help further assist you in this, don't hesitate to reach out. Feel free to. With that, we'll wish you a good night, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.
Sir, appreciate your time tonight.
Yes, sir.